morning of May 14, 2003, dawned over the rolling hills of Morgantown, West Virginia, with a thin mist curling over the tree-lined streets. In a small brick home on Willow Drive, 27-year-old Vanessa Hartley kissed her sleeping 3-year-old daughter, Amelia, and whispered promises of breakfast and a fun day at the park. She worked part-time at a local bookstore while studying accounting at the community college. Her life, a delicate balance between responsibilities and dreams. To neighbors, she was polite, quiet, and attentive. To her family, she was vibrant, strong, and endlessly devoted. By mid-morning, Vanessa had left the house with Amelia strapped securely in her stroller on the way to the park that lay just a few blocks away. She never returned. At first, her absence was assumed to be a temporary delay. Calls to friends went unanswered. Text messages, emails, and finally phone calls to her parents were ignored. Panic started to grow as hours passed. That evening, a neighbor found Vanessa's abandoned car parked by the side of the park road, doors locked, keys still in the ignition. Her purse was inside, along with her wallet, ID, and cell phone. The stroller had been left neatly at the park entrance. Amelia was gone. Authorities were called, and the Morgantown Police Department opened what would soon become one of the most agonizing cold cases in West Virginia's history. Detective James Calloway, a veteran investigator known for his meticulous attention to detail, took the case personally. "I remember looking at that stroller, perfectly parked, and thinking, someone wanted this to be noticed," Calloway recalled years later. "It was both careless and calculated at the same time." Over the next months, investigators combed the area, interviewed friends, colleagues, and neighbors, and followed hundreds of leads. Vanessa's disappearance became a statewide concern. Flyers, TV announcements, and newspaper alerts kept her face in the public eye. But the trail ran cold. No sightings, no ransom demands, no credible tips. Amelia remained missing, and Vanessa's family was forced to grapple with the unimaginable uncertainty. Had she been kidnapped, or worse? Life continued, painfully fragmented. Vanessa's parents, Margaret and Leonard Hartley, never stopped searching. Every new lead brought hope, followed by the crushing weight of disappointment. Detective Calloway, who had never stopped reviewing the case files, kept a small photograph of Vanessa pinned to his office wall. It was a constant reminder that somewhere there was still truth waiting to be discovered. Fast forward to 2018. The case had grown stale in the public eye, but in the shadows of modern forensic innovation, hope emerged. Genetic genealogy, a revolutionary method of tracing suspects through distant relatives who had submitted DNA to public databases, had begun solving decades-old cold cases across the country. Detective Calloway, now semi-retired but still deeply involved in the case, saw an opportunity. With the Hartley family's blessing, he submitted all preserved physical evidence, including Vanessa's abandoned personal items, for DNA extraction at a specialized laboratory. Forensic expert Dr. Eliza Morgan oversaw the delicate process. "The samples were degraded, yes," she said, examining threads of fabric and trace skin cells, "but even the smallest fragment of DNA can tell a story. It's like listening for a whisper in a crowded room, knowing it's the one voice that matters." Over weeks, the lab painstakingly extracted and amplified what was left, creating a genetic profile. The results were matched against public genealogy databases, identifying distant relatives of the unknown perpetrator. This process wasn't instantaneous. Over the course of several months, Dr. Morgan and her team built family trees, tracing genetic connections across generations. What emerged was chilling: a network of relatives pointing to a man living quietly in the Morgantown area for years, seemingly unremarkable, yet connected genetically to Vanessa's abduction. Detective Calloway felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "You don't realize how close monsters can be," he said. "Sometimes they're sitting at the next table in the cafe, while their crimes are still unsolved." By December 2018, the investigation had narrowed to a handful of potential suspects. Surveillance and discreet inquiries revealed subtle patterns. The man had been in the area at the time of Vanessa's disappearance, had knowledge of her routine, and most chillingly, a history of manipulating situations to his advantage. His name was Arthur Pennington, 46, a local handyman known for volunteering at community centers, admired for his helpfulness and trusted by families. No one could have suspected him until now. Detective Calloway and his team proceeded with extreme caution. Any misstep could jeopardize the entire investigation. For weeks, officers observed Pennington, documenting his movements, habits, and interactions, all while gathering discarded DNA samples covertly. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One morning, Pennington left a coffee cup behind at a local cafe. Laboratory testing of saliva residue confirmed the DNA match. 100% probability that he had been involved in Vanessa Hartley's disappearance. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Hartley family. Margaret Hartley, now 58, wept openly. "I never thought I would live to see this day," she whispered. Her husband Leonard, though stoic, was visibly shaken. For 15 years they had clung to hope while navigating an ocean of despair. The man responsible for their daughter's disappearance and for the trauma inflicted on young Amelia was finally identified. The arrest was executed quietly in the early hours of January 22, 2019. Pennington was taken into custody without incident, his public persona of kindness and dependability unraveling instantly under the weight of the evidence. News of the arrest reverberated through Morgantown. Neighbors, coworkers, and friends struggled to reconcile the helpful handyman they knew with the predator he had concealed for decades. For Detective Calloway, the arrest was bittersweet. "We finally have a name," he said. "But that doesn't erase the years lost, the suffering endured. It doesn't bring Vanessa or Amelia back. What it does is give the family something no one else could, a chance for closure, for answers, and a measure of justice." Yet the story was far from over. The investigation now shifted to reconstructing Pennington's movements in 2003, understanding his motives, and recovering Amelia, whose fate had remained a harrowing unknown. Community volunteers, psychologists, and law enforcement worked tirelessly, knowing that each detail was critical to completing the story and honoring the Hartley family's loss. The case of Vanessa Hartley had gone cold for 15 years, but thanks to advances in DNA analysis, relentless investigation, and the unwavering determination of those who refused to give up, a sliver of hope had returned. In Morgantown, whispers began to circulate, not just of horror but of resilience, of the power of science to illuminate long-hidden truths, and of the human spirit's refusal to surrender to despair. And as the investigation continued, one thing was clear. The community's trust had been shattered, but justice, slow, meticulous, and precise, was finally beginning to take root. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support ensures these stories of solved cold cases reach people who need to hear them, and helps bring closure to families waiting decades for answers. The weeks following Arthur Pennington's identification were a whirlwind of activity. Detective James Calloway and his team knew that DNA had solved half the puzzle, but Amelia Hartley's fate remained a horrifying unknown. Every second counted, yet every lead had to be handled with precision. A single mistake could compromise the fragile case. Dr. Eliza Morgan continued to oversee the genetic evidence. Beyond the DNA match that confirmed Pennington's involvement, her team re-examined every trace of biological material collected in 2003. The abandoned stroller, the remains of Vanessa's personal effects, and even the fibers from her clothing were meticulously analyzed. They uncovered minute strands of hair and skin that, when cross-referenced with Pennington's DNA, created a chilling picture of prolonged captivity. The child, Amelia, had been kept in conditions previously unimaginable, away from all signs of the outside world. Detective Calloway's team began combing Pennington's property under court order. What they discovered in the back shed was both meticulous and horrifying, a small hidden room carefully insulated from light and sound. It contained rudimentary bedding, empty cans of baby formula, and discarded toys, all pointing to a child having lived there for an extended period. Calloway recalled the moment he stepped inside. It was silent, almost sterile. The air smelled faintly of cleaning products and neglect. And yet the traces were unmistakable. This is where she had been. Neighbors, who had trusted Pennington for years, were stunned. A man who had volunteered at community centers, helped elderly residents with yard work, and even coached Little League had concealed such a secret life. As news of the discovery leaked, whispers of disbelief and terror rippled through Morgantown. Psychologists brought in to advise the police warned of the community-wide trauma that could follow. When someone like Pennington is revealed to be capable of this, explained Dr. Sarah Linton, a forensic psychologist, the betrayal shakes the foundation of trust, particularly in small towns. People will question everyone they know for months, maybe years. Forensic analysis continued. Dr. Morgan's team examined every fiber and particle in the hidden room. A smattering of Vanessa's hair was found, along with fragments of clothing from Amelia, confirming beyond doubt that the child had been forcibly removed from her stroller and hidden. Evidence suggested that Pennington had constructed the room sometime after Vanessa's disappearance, perhaps anticipating that the trail might go cold, a cruel foresight that amplified the horror of his planning. Meanwhile, the Hartley family struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the revelations. Margaret Hartley, Amelia's grandmother, had become a pillar of strength for her son Leonard, who had been plagued by guilt for not being able to prevent the abduction. The family's attorney arranged private counseling sessions as the investigation unfolded, understanding that emotional trauma was as pressing as the criminal case itself. "They've been living in a state of suspended grief for 15 years, said Counselor Diane Reynolds. Now, with the discovery of what happened, it's almost unbearable, but it's necessary to finally confront the truth. Law enforcement's next step was to carefully extract Amelia from Pennington's hidden room. The team prepared for every contingency. Negotiations were unnecessary. Pennington did not resist, perhaps understanding the inevitability of discovery. When Amelia was finally brought into the daylight, she was wrapped in a blanket and visibly traumatized, yet alive. Social workers and emergency medical personnel immediately began providing care. Detective Calloway later described the moment as surreal. "We had solved a cold case that haunted a community for years, but in that moment, seeing her safe, it was a mixture of relief and horror. Relief that she was alive, horror at what she endured." As Amelia adjusted to the world outside the room, investigators delved deeper into Pennington's history. They discovered that he had a pattern of manipulation and concealment stretching back decades, often preying on families who trusted him implicitly. His meticulous planning, use of social reputation as camouflage, and calculated patience were terrifyingly effective. In court, prosecutors would later argue that Pennington's charm and perceived helpfulness were tools to mask his dark compulsions, a textbook example of a predator integrating seamlessly into a community. Public reaction was immediate and visceral. Morgantown residents expressed shock and disbelief. Community meetings were convened to discuss how a seemingly ordinary man could hide such depravity for 15 years. Local media covered every aspect of the case, including the painstaking investigation, the forensic breakthroughs, and the recovery of Amelia. Social media erupted with messages of outrage, sympathy for the Hartley family, and disbelief at the story's unfolding. Psychologists emphasized the importance of processing grief, both for the family and for the larger community, noting that the revelation of betrayal by a trusted figure often triggers long-lasting communal trauma. Legal proceedings moved quickly after the arrest. Pennington faced multiple charges: first-degree kidnapping, abduction of a minor, prolonged unlawful imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit murder. DNA evidence, forensic analysis, and the recovered items from the hidden room formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Detective Calloway worked closely with prosecutors to ensure that every piece of evidence was documented meticulously. He knew that a single error could allow Pennington to evade justice yet again, and that wasn't an option for a case that had haunted him for 15 years. The courtroom was tense when the trial began. Amelia, now 18, attended with her grandmother, Margaret, and other family members. Her testimony, recorded in a protected session for her safety, recounted only fragments of memory, fleeting glimpses of the hidden room and brief encounters with Pennington, but the forensic evidence filled in the horrifying details. The jury listened, rapt, as prosecutors laid out Pennington's years of deception, the care with which he hid Amelia, and the psychological torment he inflicted on the Hartley family. Psychologists and forensic experts testified about the behavioral patterns of predators like Pennington, explaining how charm and community involvement often mask the capacity for prolonged violence. Dr. Linton explained that Amelia's resilience, combined with the DNA breakthroughs, had provided the critical evidence needed to secure justice. "It's rare," she testified, "to see such a case solved after more than a decade." The combination of meticulous investigation, modern forensics, and the courage of a survivor makes this a landmark example of cold case resolution. By early 2019, the verdict was delivered. Arthur Pennington was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The Hartley family, while relieved, acknowledged that the trauma of the past 15 years would remain. Detective Calloway reflected on the case, noting that while justice had been served, the real triumph was in reclaiming Amelia's life and restoring a measure of safety and dignity to the Hartley family. The case became a template for law enforcement nationwide, demonstrating the power of DNA technology and persistent detective work. Workshops and seminars highlighted the Hartley case as a study in cold case resolution, community awareness, and victim recovery. Schools incorporated the story into discussions about safety, trust, and vigilance, while local media emphasized the importance of forensic science in bringing closure to families who had waited far too long for answers. Amelia Hartley, now a young adult, has since dedicated her life to advocacy, working with organizations focused on child safety and the protection of vulnerable families. She has spoken publicly about her experience, emphasizing the importance of hope, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Margaret Hartley, ever the protector and matriarch, continues to provide guidance and support, ensuring that her granddaughter's voice and story are never forgotten. The Morgantown community, once shattered by betrayal and loss, began the slow process of healing. Annual memorials for Vanessa Hartley and the awareness campaigns led by Amelia's advocacy work serve as reminders that even in the darkest chapters, the pursuit of truth and justice can bring light, closure, and resilience. In the end, the West Virginia 2003 cold case was more than a story of crime. It was a story of human endurance, scientific innovation, and the refusal to let time erase the need for justice. It was a reminder that even after decades, truth can emerge, and families can find the closure they so desperately deserve. The day of Arthur Pennington's sentencing arrived with a gray, heavy sky hanging over Morgantown, mirroring the tension in the packed courthouse. Community members, journalists, and law enforcement officers filled the benches, each with their own connection to the decades-long investigation. Some had watched the Hartley family suffer silently for 15 years, while others had followed every painstaking detail of the forensic breakthroughs that finally led to justice. The courtroom was tense, silent, the air charged with anticipation. Amelia Hartley, now 18, entered first, flanked by her grandmother Margaret. The transformation from a frightened child hidden in a basement to a poised young adult advocating for vulnerable children was striking. She carried herself with dignity, the weight of her past evident only in the depth of her gaze. Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she clutched Amelia's, but her face remained a mask of composed determination. Detective Calloway and his team were present, along with the prosecutors who had meticulously built the case over months. Every officer, investigator, and forensic expert knew the importance of this moment, not just legally, but emotionally for the family and the community. As the judge entered, Arthur Pennington was brought in, escorted by corrections officers. He appeared smaller than he had in the months of investigation, his confident demeanor replaced by a quiet, almost resigned presence. His eyes, once sharp and calculating, now darted nervously, taking in the faces of those he had terrorized for over a decade. The courtroom remained silent, the weight of decades of suffering palpable. The prosecution opened with a detailed recounting of the investigation. Every piece of evidence was presented, from the DNA matches confirming Pennington's identity to the meticulous forensic examination of the hidden room. The images, while carefully censored for public consumption, made the gravity of his actions unmistakable. Prosecutor Helen Monroe's voice was steady but unwavering. "This is a case that took 15 years to resolve," she said. 15 years in which a family grieved without answers and a predator hid in plain sight. Today, the law will recognize the enormity of his crimes and ensure that justice is served. Testimonies were given by forensic specialists, investigators, and psychologists who detailed the behavioral patterns of predators like Pennington. Dr. Sarah Linton explained how his ability to integrate into the community and maintain a facade of normalcy was a deliberate strategy, designed to evade suspicion and prolong his control over Amelia. Her words painted a chilling picture. Someone capable of extreme patience, manipulation, and cruelty, all masked by a veneer of helpfulness and community involvement. Amelia's testimony, pre-recorded and presented for her protection, was brief but powerful. She recounted fragments of her experience, moments of fear, confusion, and the eerie silence of the hidden room. Her voice, steady yet emotional, conveyed the trauma without descending into sensationalism. It was enough to remind the courtroom that the human cost of Pennington's crimes extended far beyond the forensic evidence. Margaret Hartley's impact statement was read aloud, her words heavy with the weight of years spent in grief. "For 15 years, we lived in a world without answers," her statement began. "Every day was filled with the question, where is Amelia? What happened to her? Today, some of that darkness has been lifted. Today, the law recognizes her suffering and acknowledges the years stolen from her childhood. Arthur Pennington, your crimes have left scars that will never fully heal. But justice at last has arrived." The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to pronounce the sentence. Every eye was on Pennington, who had remained eerily quiet throughout the proceedings. When the words came, they were clear, decisive, and final: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Gasps and subdued sobs filled the room. For the Hartleys, it was a moment of closure that had been decades in the making. For Amelia, it was the first time in 15 years that she could truly imagine a life free from fear. Outside the courthouse, community members gathered, many expressing disbelief that someone so trusted could commit such unspeakable crimes. Psychologists and counselors were on hand to help residents process the complex emotions that surfaced: relief that justice had been served, horror at the extent of the crimes, and anger at the betrayal of trust. Detective Calloway addressed the press, emphasizing the collaborative effort that brought Pennington to justice. "This case is a testament to persistence," he said. "It shows that even after 15 years, truth can prevail." The Hartley family's courage, combined with forensic science and investigative diligence, brought resolution to a case that haunted our community for too long. In the weeks that followed, Amelia began working with child advocacy organizations, using her experience to educate others about the importance of vigilance, safety, and the power of resilience. Margaret continued to support her granddaughter, ensuring that her story was never forgotten. Their efforts transformed a narrative of tragedy into one of empowerment, turning personal trauma into advocacy that would protect countless other children. The Morgantown community slowly began to heal. Memorials for Vanessa Hartley, the original victim, were maintained and expanded to honor Amelia's survival. Local schools incorporated lessons on child safety and the importance of reporting suspicions, drawing from the Hartley case as a real-world example. Law enforcement agencies nationwide cited the case in seminars and workshops, emphasizing the importance of DNA evidence, forensic diligence, and the persistence required to solve long-cold cases. Even years later, the shadow of Pennington's crimes lingered. But Amelia's courage, Margaret's resilience, and the dedication of Detective Calloway's team created a new legacy, one where justice, no matter how delayed, could prevail, and where survivors could reclaim their lives. The case became a reference point for families still awaiting closure, a reminder that perseverance, coupled with modern forensic science, can unearth truth even after decades of silence. For the Hartleys, the life-altering experience left permanent scars, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Amelia, once a child hidden in darkness, now worked publicly to ensure other children were protected, while Margaret provided mentorship to families navigating the aftermath of trauma. Their story, while horrific in its details, ultimately highlighted the resilience of the human spirit, the power of community support, and the irreplaceable value of justice served. The West Virginia 2003 cold case, finally resolved, stands as a testament to relentless pursuit of truth. It reminds us that even in the most unimaginable circumstances, kidnappings, long-term abuse, and betrayal by a trusted figure, justice can arrive, even decades later. And for families like the Hartleys, that justice, though delayed, provides a foundation upon which healing and advocacy can be built.